The Alldus podcast is brought to you by Alldus International, supplying your expert AI and digital transformation staffing needs across the US and Europe. Today, you are listening to our AI in Action series, where leading minds in AI from across the world share their story, success, and advice. AI in Action cuts through the hype and explores the true impact of artificial intelligence in our world today.
You're listening to AI in Action. I'm your host, JP Valentine. Our guest today is Mark Shoun. Mark is the Chief Data Scientist at Ledger Investing. Mark, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
So let's jump straight into it. Mark, could you give us a bit of a background of your journey in technology, from where you got started, some of the roles you've held along the way, and take us up to today as the Chief Data Scientist at Ledger Investing?
So my background in data science is a little bit non-traditional. My undergraduate degree was actually in jazz trombone. And after I got my degree, I spent 5 years playing trombone professionally, mostly with the United States Air Force. I got to live a couple of years in Nebraska, a couple of years in Japan. And it was good and rewarding and fun. And I followed music because I had a passion for music, but it didn't take me too long to realize that in a professional context, there's a big difference between playing the music that you love because you love it and playing the music that you have to play because it's part of your job. And it's like anything else in life. Plenty of things are fun as a passion until you turn it into your full-time gig, and then it's not nearly as enjoyable. And so after years of that, and for a couple of personal reasons, I decided to stop trying to pursue music professionally and to move into something else. And that's when I decided to leverage my always abiding passion for mathematics and statistics and computer science. And this was right at the time when data science was starting to pick up as a sort of trending career field. And so I went back and I got my master's degree in predictive analytics from Northwestern University. My first role in data science was inside Geico, where I was performing a role that was really trying to use data science techniques in an actuarial context. So we were situated within the actuarial department, answering actuarial questions, but just with more modern techniques than the traditional actuarial toolkit. But that's where I sort of got my feet wet in the data science field and within the insurance industry in particular. I spent a year after Geico at another small shop that was doing some interesting things with location data and with option pricing. But after that, I found an opportunity at Ledger Investing, and I came on in the summer of 2018. I joined pretty shortly after the seed round. And so I came on as employee number 6. And when I started off, I was the data science department all by myself. And it's been really cool over the past 4.5 years to see the company grow.
Thank you for the background. And it leads nicely into where you are now as the Chief Data Scientist. We want to obviously talk a bit more about your role in a moment, but let's take a step back. Tell the audience, who are Ledger Investing? What do you do? What's the mission of the organization?
The mission of Ledger Investing is all about connecting insurance and insurers to capital providers. So basically, in order for insurance companies to offer insurance policies, they have to have a lot of money on their balance sheet as reserves in case they have to pay out losses that are above and beyond their expected loss level. And that obviously is a very capital intensive operation. And so insurers have a long history of going out and trying to find capital from other sources, whether that's quite often through a mechanism called reinsurance, which reinsurance is just insurance for insurance companies. And the reinsurance industry it's been around for decades, and it serves a useful purpose in the market. But also insurers and reinsurers tend to be relatively conservative in terms of not wanting to try anything too far off the beaten path, because understandably, there is sort of a fiduciary concern that they want to make sure that they're always solvent. On the other side of this, what we saw as a company was that there was a lot of opportunity for other people who might want to contribute capital to invest in insurance underwriting returns who are not traditional reinsurers, hedge funds, pension plans, other big institutional investors that are looking for consistent returns year over year. The way that they're able to get those consistent returns is by having diversified portfolios across a lot of different asset classes. So they'll be in stocks and bonds and real estate, whether that's commercial or private real estate, art, wine, all sorts of different asset classes. And the nice thing is that we have done the studies to back this up, but insurance underwriting returns, particularly on certain types of insurance like auto insurance or general liability insurance or workers' compensation insurance, the performance of those lines of business have virtually nothing to do with the rest of the economy. And so if you're looking for a diversified, uncorrelated portfolio, insurance is a really attractive way to invest your money. So the reason that this market doesn't already exist for these types of insurance is that the investors, although they understand the basic value proposition, they don't know enough about the ins and outs of casualty insurance to go out and broker their own deals and work directly with insurers and figure out which risks are good and which risks are bad and which deals they should take and whether the price is fair and all that. And so we come in essentially as an intermediary. We talk to the insurers, the people who are actually writing the policies, find the ones who need capital. We go out and we talk to the investors, the hedge funds and the pension plans and the other big institutional investors that want to get in on this new asset class. And then we basically play a combination of matchmaker and translator. We help the insurers understand the investors' needs, help the investors understand what they're actually buying, and give them that level of transparency into the assets that they're obtaining, and basically do everything we need to do in order to actually execute the transaction.
Thank you for that, Mark. Obviously, very complex given the layers of data that you're talking about, insurance upon reinsurance with analytics and actuarial pricing. As the chief data scientist, a lot of the data aspects of this falls on your direct report. So can you walk us through what you're primarily responsible for? Give us an overview of your team and just give us a look behind the scenes of the day-to-day of your overall data organization.
So I'll start with the team composition. The team that I run is 11 right now, including myself. We've got a few more folks who are joining next month, and we're still continuing to grow. But we've got a mix of skill sets, and our team is fairly self-sufficient. Of course, there's a separate engineering team within the company, and we've got a great relationship with them, and we help each other out a lot. But we also do or rather a lot of the data ingest ourselves. We do all of the analytics ourselves. And when it comes to productionizing models, we do that ourselves as well. So when we look at a transaction, the fundamental goal of the data science team from a business perspective is to model out the risks in an independent and objective way. Investors can't rely on what insurers think the losses on a portfolio of insurance risks is going to be for obvious reasons, because even if the insurer has the best intentions, because of the incentives at play, they might tend to be a little bit too optimistic in how they think their program is going to perform. And so they want somebody to come in and give their own assessment. And we do that not through traditional actuarial techniques. And that's a deliberate choice on our part. Traditional actuarial techniques are great for answering certain questions, but they also have a lot of subjectivity involved. The old joke is you ask 5 actuaries for their opinion and you get 6 different answers. And we want consistency in terms of what we're able to, and objectivity and transparency in terms of how we model the risks. So what we do is we take in the raw data, and this is typically raw policy level and claim level data. And of course, it comes in any number of formats and any number of degrees of cleanliness. And so a lot of our time, like in any other data science shop, is making sure that we can ingest the data, that the data is internally consistent, that it's clean, that we understand all the semantics behind the data, and that we can actually rely on it, especially when we're doing this for the purposes of transactions with millions of dollars at stake. Data cleanliness is a big priority of ours. Once we've got the data inside, we have a modeling philosophy that we've developed over the past few years about how we actually model these transactions. And the core models that we have behind the scenes are almost all Bayesian in outlook. So we're using the STAN language, if you're familiar with that, which is the best-in-class model for doing Bayesian modeling via this technique known as Hamiltonian Monte Carlo, which, technicalities aside, the great thing that Bayesian modeling does for us compared to, say, more traditional machine learning techniques like neural networks, GBMs, things of that nature is twofold. First of all, these Bayesian models still have a parametric representation at the end of the day. There are parameters in the model. You can write down the equations. They're not black boxes. There is interpretability and transparency there for the investor. And the second thing is, since this is Bayesian, we don't just get point estimates at the end of the day when we're done fitting these models. We actually get full posterior distributions. And so we're able to not just say, this is what we think the expected performance is. We can say, this is the expected distribution of all possible outcomes for this portfolio. And that's super useful for our investors because from their perspective, this is a transfer of risk. And if they can't quantify how much risk they're taking on for a given projected rate of return, they're not interested in the deal. And so this quantification of uncertainty is really at the core of what we do from a modeling perspective. Once we do all that, once we basically price out the transaction and say, this is what we think the outcomes are going to be, then we hand it off to the capital team within the company And they're the ones who do all the negotiations and figuring out how to structure the contract and the financial instruments so that it's a win-win for everybody and everybody can get their objectives met. But all of that is relying on the assumptions and the modeling that we do and relying on our results.
You are listening to the Alldus podcast. When you're looking to scale your team, or if you are interested in showcasing your company in a future episode, reach out today. Or if you're in the market for a new role, visit our website to view open positions, www.alldus.com.
Mark, I'd love to now go a bit more in depth into looking at the current team. You obviously joined as being one of the first 10 employees at Ledger Investing and the only person in the entire data organization. Can you walk us through what the journey has been like growing out the team and take us up to the today, the here and now, the different positions, and what it's like to be a part of the team day to day on a particular project?
So I was the data science department by myself for about the first 2 years. And really at that time inside the data science team, the work that I was doing by myself was really trying to figure out how can we model this asset class? What are going to be our philosophical underpinnings? And just how is this all going to work? After we raised our Series A in 2020, then we expanded the team to about 7. And at that point, we had done a few of these transactions at this point, and it became about how do we start to scale this? Instead of writing bespoke models for every single transaction that comes down, what are the big pieces of infrastructure that we need in place in order to be able to make our process replicatable and scalable and repeatable? And when we were hiring then, we were really looking for, I hate to say generalists, but we needed people who had a fairly broad range of skills. After we raised our Series B earlier this year, and now we've done a few dozen transactions under our belt, now we're really trying to focus on scaling and further automating. And at this point, we're really sort of looking for we have a few different sort of skill sets in the team. We have certainly several people in our team with deep actuarial backgrounds, including people who are credentialed actuaries. We are dealing with insurance data, and just like with any other data science problem, it's absolutely critical to understand the problem domain thoroughly in order to be able to apply the right models. We've also got people who have deep experience with the particular Bayesian tool sets that we use, people who have prior experience with Stan and with Bayesian modeling in general to make sure that we are using the tools that we have to their full advantage. We've also got people with experience in terms of sort of machine learning engineering. We build a lot of infrastructure, including several Python packages that we use internally for our own purposes. And being able to maintain our own code bases and build the things that we need internally instead of having to ask somebody else to do it for us is super important. And finally, we've got people who are data wizards who really understand the nitty gritty of when you're looking at data that comes out of a raw insurance production system, what kind of issues might be there, what kind of assumptions can you make, what kind of things do you absolutely need to clarify to make sure that all the numbers come in right. In terms of day-to-day, we're actually migrating away from having each of the skill sets, the verticals in their own silos, having an engineering team versus a data science team versus a sales team. And instead, we're going with more of a project-oriented format so that for any given objective that the company has, that can be expressed in terms of a project where there's clear deliverables and a clear timeline, we'll set up a team that's got the exact mix of skills that we need in order to get it done, whether that's data science or engineering or product or design or sales or what have you, and then give them a mandate, give them all the resources that they need in order to get the job done so they don't have to wait on anybody else, rely on anybody else, and they're able to take full ownership of the project. And so there's a highly collaborative culture that we have. We don't have a lot of pigeonholing in terms of specific titles or specific skill sets. To the extent that people are interested in stuff, they have the freedom to go out and satisfy that interest. To the extent that people want to go out and acquire new skills, we absolutely support that because the more well-rounded our data scientists are, the better they're able to contribute to the organization. And this new project-oriented way of doing things is already starting to yield benefits, and it's a great way for us to collaborate.
Staying on the topic of team, then you've obviously brought together a multifunctional team, but varied backgrounds to take Ledger Investing to where you are today. As you start to now look ahead into the next chapter of your journey, and particularly the roadmap over the next 12 to 24 months, what are some of the growth milestones that you're working towards? What are you particularly excited about yourself? And how is that going to impact your overall team in terms of need to continue to grow and bring in various skill sets?
As a company, we're all pretty excited about the opportunity that we face. We think that this is a situation that's pretty analogous to, say, the credit markets back in the 1980s.
Where this is an asset class that's really going to take off over the next few years.
We're already seeing the growth opportunities start to manifest, and we think it's just a matter of staffing up, doing the work, and taking advantage of the opportunity that's in front of us. That being said, we do think of ourselves as a tech company. We are a tech company, and at least from my team's perspective, the defining characteristic of us as a tech company is our ability to scale revenue linearly, or exponentially, hopefully, while scaling our headcount of employees sublinearly with respect to revenue. In other words, being able to have fewer people do more work because we're better able to automate and leverage technology and take care of the boring grunt work without making that extremely labor intensive. So over the next few years, we do see our revenue growing by a lot. And we also see ourselves needing to hire more data scientists in order to keep up with the volume there. But it's not a matter of our revenue gets X times higher, and that means we need X times more employees on the data science team. We'll be growing, but just in order to keep up with the exponential growth that we're hopefully going to see on the revenue side. In terms of specific projects and initiatives that we've got going on, right now, we've done the hard work over the last couple of years of laying the foundation of where we need to be analytically in order to be able to run these transaction analyses at scale. And in doing so, we've really been prioritizing sort of the infrastructure side of things rather than the sort of statistics research, R&D, developing cool new model side of things. And now that we've got that foundation in place, I think that over the next year or two, there's going to be a lot of cool stuff that we can do in terms of building new and interesting and innovative and powerful models for better predicting the core quantities that we're interested in. And the nice thing about us is that certainly we see our analytics as a competitive advantage, but we also don't see our statistical models as our secret sauce. And we have a lot of support from our leadership in terms of being able to present at conferences, write papers, and otherwise publicize and socialize the work that we're doing with the broader industry to get everybody else on board with the way that we view these problems. And so for the folks in my team, I see a fantastic amount of opportunity for building cool new models and then sharing their results with the rest of the world.
Thank you so much for coming on today and talking to us. Fascinating to learn about your own very interesting journey from professional musician to chief data scientist. What you're doing at Ledger Investing, it really is creating a new subsection of an already complex industry where AI and data science can have a massive impact. The growth you've had over the last few years is phenomenal, and it sounds like it's only going to continue. So for people who are interested in this type of work, please do check out Ledger Investing. And we look forward to having you back on the show in a couple of years' time and hearing about the continued success that you've had as a business. So thank you very much.
Thank you. It's been great to be here.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Alldus podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. We are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and any Android podcast of choice. You can also head over to our website, www.alldus.com, to listen to more podcasts, view our open roles, and stay up to date with industry news. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for more great episodes coming very soon.